that shows the biblical stories in the Bible must have come from the Greeks. Had to, because this stuff is before. Now, if you want to believe the Bible and believe Moses and the Levites, and he wrote this whole Torah out, and it was an oral Torah, and they had all this information, and that the biblical stories happened before Greek mythology, we can't prove none of this, then you will believe that the Greeks copied from, real life, because there was no Bible yet. So this stuff can be, 1000 BCE, and there was a Bible for them to get this information. They're in two different locations. There's no way they should know what they know unless it's what happened to them. So then you have a decision to make. Do you believe the Greeks or do you believe the Bible? More information and proof supports the Greeks than the Bible. So we talked about the Garden of Hesperides story, and anybody who's looked into this story can clearly see that this is where the Garden of Eden story must have come from. It's very similar to the Garden of Eden story. And again, as I said, most people look at it and say, well, the Garden of Eden story is, first, but we can't prove that it's first if we're going to go into mythology or biblical history and take that as fact, then it's first. But in proven history, in this real world, there is nothing biblical that predates the story. So in the Garden of Hesperides story, for those of you who have looked, we see you have the serpent in the tree, you have the apples of immortality, you have the story with Hercules, which will be Hercules, and Noah is also in this story, by a different name, which we'll get into in a second. But the biggest part is understanding that, this story, the Garden of Hesperides, begins with two people, and we have Zeus and Hera. So it says here, Zeus and Hera, the first couple according to the Greeks, seated together on the east frieze of the Parthenon from about 435 BC. The Judeo-Christian tradition considers Adam as the father of all humanity. The term Father Zeus is a description of the king of the gods that appears over 100 times in the ancient writings of Homer. According to the ancient poet Hesiod, Zeus is the father of God's men, the gods being deified ancestors. Genesis 3:20 describes Eve as the mother of all the living. In a hymn of invocation, the 6th century BC lyric poet Alcaeus refers to Hera as mother of all. As the first wife, the Greeks worshipped Hera as the goddess of marriage. As the first mother, the Greeks worshipped her as the goddess of childbirth. Both the Judeo-Christian traditions and the Greek religious tradition insist that their respective first couples came out of an ancient paradise with a serpent-entwined fruit tree. Two opposite spiritual standpoints, the former looking to the Creator as the source of truth, and the latter looking to the serpent for it, share the same factual basis. Again, this is something you're going to see because people are very careful about what they say that's in the professional field, especially pertaining to history. So they don't want to risk their credentials. They don't want to risk their position, their jobs, or what have you, saying the wrong thing that's going to offend people in power. So everybody know, don't say nothing about the Jews, don't say nothing pertaining to them, but you still got a job to do. So it's clear as day, they know, anybody that's a real researcher understands that clearly this, story is first. This Greek story comes before the Adam and Eve story, and we don't have anything that's concrete that, shows that it came, before the Garden of Hesperides. Now, we know that this stuff is older. We have the pottery. A lot of these stories, we have Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, of course, but we still have a lot of ancient Greek artifacts because the civilization still stands, still exists. So the pottery is in museums. They still find this stuff to this day. These stories were put on pottery, or we find them. You've seen them. So it says here, ancient Greek vase artists painted images of biblical figures, Noah and Nimrod, over 2,000 years ago. And Nimrod, as you will understand, will be Hercules or Hercules, same person. The book of Genesis describes human history. Ancient Greek religious art depicts human history. While their viewpoints are opposite, the recounted events and characters match each other in convincing detail. This brief article focuses on how Greek religious art portrayed Noah and how it portrayed Nimrod and his successful rebellion against Noah's authority. So understanding, wait a minute, how is it that we have the story of Noah, you'll see the different name, Noah, in Greek mythology? How is this possible? So in this story, it's a post-flood story where you basically have Hercules trying to gain back, the planet for the mortals, trying to gain it back. And he's trying to get the apples of immortality to do so. So it says here, Hercules goes for the apples. The seated man on the vase to our right of the tree is Nimrod / Hercules. The goal of Nimrod / Hercules in the post-flood world was to push Noah and his God out of the picture, dispatch those who disagree with his own mankind-exalting rule, and get back to the ancient garden for another bite of the serpent's apple. It's anti-creator enlightenment and the promise of immortality without God. Sounds familiar, right? On a vase depiction from, this is 450 BC, Nimrod / Hercules makes off with the apple as one of the Hesperides gestures for him to stay with them. And this is Nereus, or the Greek Noah. The Greeks knew exactly who Noah was. They call him Nereus, the wet one, the Hellas Guron, the salt sea old man. Above, we see 3 different depictions of Nereus from ancient Greek vases. On all 3, he looks very old. He is seated as if on a throne, and he holds a scepter, a symbol of rule. The simple artistic communication. Here is the old man who ruled. Genesis 6:9 speaks highly of Noah's character. Noah is a just man, flawless, became he in his generations. With God walks Noah. The ancient Greek poet Hesiod says essentially the same thing about Nereus. But Pontos, the great sea, was father of truthful Nereus, who tells no lies. Eldest of his sons, they call him the old gentleman because he is trustworthy and gentle and never forgetful of what is right. But the thoughts of his mind are mild and righteous. Goes on to say, and remember this depiction of him holding that rod in his hand. Says, Nimrod Hercules usurps the authority of Noah Nereus. Nimrod Hercules begins his serpent and mankind exalting rebellion by nullifying the authority of Noah. The prophet of God who brought humanity through the flood had to be pushed out of the picture and his rule brought to an end. Above, on a red figure bobbing, Nimrod Hercules knocks Noah Nereus, who holds the scepter of rule, out of the way, invalidating his authority and replacing it with his own. Hercules wears the lion's head and carries his club as signs of his great prowess. He forces Noah to drop the fish, a sign of his now disrupted authority in connection with the flood. So remember, the lion's head and the club, we're going to come back to this later to make a point. It says, after the flood, God instructed mankind to be fruitful and increase and fill the earth and subdue it. That's Genesis 9:1. That included subjecting every living animal of the earth, all of the fishes of the sea, and every flyer of the heavens. Greek art portrayed Hercules as the master hunter doing exactly that in a post-flood world. First 3 labors of Hercules, and we heard about the labors of Hercules. I talked about this before, but these are the first 3 labors of Hercules. And the reason why Rome took over it and brought out Hercules is to cover this story up, because we see more of Hercules, the Roman side, than the Greek side, because we know of Hercules and not Heracles, but that's more Roman. But we know about the labors of Hercules. The first 3 labors of Nimrod, Hercules, reconstructed above by Holmes Bryant as they appear on the temple of Zeus at Olympia. Boasts of his conquest of the most powerful animals of the land, water, and air, the lion of Nemea, the fearsome hydra of Lima, and the vicious man-attacking bird of the lake, Symphalis. Athena accompanied him on all 3 of these labors, although the sculpture had no room for her in their depiction of him killing the water monster. So to me, clear as day, simple. You take the story from Genesis, you take the story about Noah, take the story about Hercules, and then we know that the Romans took from the Greeks, and gave us Roman gods. And it's clear as day. They're telling you right here, well, wait a minute, this is where Rome got this figure from. The story predates anything biblical. We have the story. We know it predates anything biblical. So why is we believing this Noah story? And it's very simple. Nobody taught it to us. Very simple. Nobody taught us. Story's been here longer than the Bible. Nobody taught us. Nobody told us about the story. So if he was an ancient Greek scholar, this is why a lot of researchers and scholars don't believe in the Bible. They know where it came from. This is why I laugh at people who be talking shit, because I know you haven't done any real extensive research. And there's no way you can say the Bible predates this when we don't have one that predates it. When you have an actual Greek person who is responsible for giving us the Bible, we can see clearly where they got their stories from. We know where they got it from. They got it from their own mythology. Plain and simple. So it's not hard to put it together and see what took place. But this is one of the things that a few people are pointing out in their argument about the Bible. It also coincides with the Deucalion Fair flood story, which we have in Greek. Also, the Pandora's box, which we have in Greek. We have Hercules, and Samson, and it's not a coincidence that they put these two together in movies, telling you straight to your face what it is. So I know some people teeter-totter, some of you even teeter-totter with religion. You're seeing this stuff come to fruition as far as so-called Bible prophecy, but you're not understanding. You're not understanding, and then anything that comes up that looks biblical, that looks correct, people run back to the Bible. But it's clear as day where they got the stuff from. Clear as day. You can't find a story that predates this pottery. You take a look at this pottery. It's here. It exists. We have it. It's dated. It's agreed upon by all researchers. The dating is correct. Greece still exists. It still stands. You go over there and you will see this stuff. It's still there. When Frank Gaudio pulled that stuff out of the water, he pulled out a lot of this pottery. The artifacts that we need to prove what we're saying exist, they are real. When it comes to the Hebrews and their story, nothing. And what we do find is suspect. It looked like some stuff that anybody could have wrote on, and nobody agrees on it. It's not agreed upon by researchers. So understand how that works. Somebody finds it and says what they believes it to be. It is tested, and if everybody confirms the same thing, then boom, you have something that's proven. This is not the case with any artifact that's supposed to be pertaining to the biblical Jews. So the Greeks had their own plan, ready to come up with this whole story to put themselves in as being this people, until Rome came in and intervened. Now, I talked about Dr. Joseph Yehuda in the book Hebrew is Greek, and how he's clearly given us this understanding that, hey, the Arabic and the Hebrew language came from the Greeks. Now, this is the thing, because I know some of you did the research on this, and I know you ran into the problem that most of the Hebrews cite when it comes to Joseph Yehuda, not just him, the people of Greece who's trying to put this information out. So understand this. Let's make it real clear real fast. Understand, this is what they believe. One, they believe that the Greeks created the Hebrew and Arabic language. What they also believe is it's some kind of conspiracy with these so-called Jews. And they, or a sect of Jews, which would be Greeks, basically piggyback off of Greek history to give us the Old Testament, and the New Testament. So they believe that this stuff happened. Oh, the Bible is real. This stuff is true. But these so-called Hebrews are lying about the Israelites, because they see what I just told you.